Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to show you Void Linux. And this was a request made yesterday, a couple days ago actually, by Brandon Philander. And Brandon, yes, that was a good request. In fact, Void Linux is something that I was a little bit curious about anyway. And then I got another request by Chris Tobald. And so then I thought, you know what? I really got to get my butt in gear and check out this Void Linux. So here I am at the Void Linux website. So thanks to both of you. Void Linux is really a unique distro, literally, because Void Linux is actually something that is built from the ground up. It's not a fork of another distro. It's not based on Debian or any other type of architecture. It is its own architecture with its own package manager, and it is a rolling release model as well. So these are all things that got me kind of curious about it. And it's also based on Runit as the init system. And so it's not using systemd. There's a lot of people out there that have an issue with systemd. Some people really hate it. Personally, I don't have any beef against it at all. I've used systemd for many years, and it's always been fine. But I understand kind of the reasons that a lot of people have problems with it, mainly because they don't feel they're given a choice in the direction that systemd is going, and that it runs a lot of services that they don't feel should be running. And, you know, they probably have some legitimate points there. I don't know a lot about the argument, so I really can't make an educated argument one way or the other about systemd. All I know is that it works for me, and that's probably an ignorant answer, but what can I say? So, anyway, the packaging system is xbps. That is their native system package manager, so I'm pretty curious to see how that works out. And it says that xbps allows you to quickly install, update, and remove software in your system, and features detection of incompatible shared libraries and dependencies while updating or removing packages. And I think that's pretty cool, because I thought I remember a while back the package manager in Void Linux, and I could be wrong, but I thought that back then it did not have the capability to detect dependencies. It would only detect or install literally what you told it to install, and that was it. Apparently that's changed. Either that or I was misinformed. Hard to say. But without further ado, let's jump in. So I'm going to hit the download link here, and here on this page we got a list of all these different releases that are available. And so I did reply to Brandon when he made his request, and I asked him what he would be interested in seeing as far as the desktop goes. And he was really interested in seeing a Wayland-based desktop, and he had mentioned KDE, Gnome, and Enlightenment as having the Wayland. When you look at the page here, we have the base install, and then you got Enlightenment, Cinnamon, LXDE, LXQt, Mate, and XFCE. His first choice seemed to be Gnome. You know, Enlightenment looks like a really cool choice. In fact, one of these days I'd kind of like to do that. But since he had mentioned Gnome first, I think that's the way I'll go. And Gnome is not in this list, but I can show you how to get to it. And I'm not really sure why it's not here. Maybe it's because it's not officially installed. Gnome does have a reputation for being a little bit evil. So, yeah, understandable. And here you can see that it's also available in all kinds of different CPU architectures here. The x86-64 is what most people would use, including me. But it's also available in 32-bit, the i686, and then the ARM. So if you're on an ARM or an ARM platform, like for example, if you have a mechanical ARM and you want to load and install an OS into it, there you go. Nah, I'm kidding. ARM is actually just a different type of processing system, something you'd find like in a Raspberry Pi. So anyways, moving right along, since I want to get the GNOME version here, I'm going to go up to this link here near the top, and here is showing where all the live images and root file system tarballs are available. I'm going to go ahead and hit that, and then here we come out to this page, and I've already gone ahead and downloaded a few of these, and one of them is the GNOME ISO here. And so I chose this one on the list, which is the Void Live x86-64, and the current image is from 2021, 18 February. So, and it's just labeled the date and then GNOME ISO. And so you have a lot of different versions up here. You got the i686, which is the 32-bit, and all these other variations. So if you go a little bit less than halfway, then here you have this. And you also have the muzzle versions here, the MUSL. And so that's using a variation of the glibc library. And so that might be something that some people might want to use. However, I'm installing this on real hardware. And so I'd rather just use something that's based on libc instead, or glib. And so I think there'd be less a chance that I would have issues with it. I'm going to go ahead and download, well actually I already have downloaded the GNOME ISO. So I'm going to go ahead and load this in and I'll be right back. Okay, here I am. I'm out at the GNOME Live install here, and here we have our GNOME Desktop, and we're greeted right off the bat with a GNOME welcome screen. And then we have our activities menu up here and our little side menu and all that. And then our main menu. So this is kind of what's on the Live edition by default. And if we come back out here to the front, we're greeted with the GNOME Welcome Center, and I think this is like an initial setup screen. I don't believe this is the installer, although it could be, but I don't actually see the installer. I'm going to go ahead and hit next, and then here it's asking for the type of keyboard, and it looks like Dvorak is the default, but I think I'm going to go with English US. Yes, call me strange. And actually that was checked by default. And then we have our Wi-Fi settings. And so then we would simply move on to our next. And then we have our privacy. And so this allows the application to determine your geographical location. If you're a little bit on the paranoid side, you could go ahead and turn that off. But if you use Google a lot or stuff like that, and maybe you have a lot of store accounts and you like to search for things, or you want to find the nearest pizza place, having your location available comes in kind of handy because it can hook you right up to your local store and allow you to see what's in stock in your area. However, you know, everybody's different. For me, I'm not really too worried about it, especially since this is a test install anyway. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And then here's where you can add in your online accounts if you wish. And I'm going to go ahead and skip on that. And now it says it's all done. Start using Void. Okay, so apparently that's just a setup to get GNOME set up. So, okay, that's all good. If nothing else, we verified that our networking was okay. We can install this through the console, but I'm just going to look and see if there's a graphical Calamares installer real quick. And I am not seeing it here. So, just going to back out of here and then bring up my terminal. So in here, to run the installer, we're going to have to go in as root. I'm going to go ahead and type in SU so I can be a super user. And the password for Void Linux is Void Linux, I believe. All one word, no space. There we go. Okay. So we're in as root. And then I believe the install is, I'm not 100% sure. Let me see. I think it's Void Linux -installer. How about Void installer? There we go. Okay. Oh, I was close the first time. Oh, cool. Here we go. So here we got our install, and let me go ahead and just kind of make that a little bigger just so it's easier to see there. So here we got the first section in our installer, enter the void. I like that. That's kind of cool, actually. So welcome to the Void installation. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and I'll need to do that with my keyboard, and I'm just going to press enter. And here we're back at our system keyboard setting again. So that's the first option on our list. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. And here we are at that Dvorak keyboard again. Wow, they like that Dvorak. Well, I've already had practice on that from a couple minutes ago, so I'm going to press U here, and that's going to bring me down to the U's, and then I'm going to use my down arrow and scroll down to US, which is right there. I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and then here's our network setup. I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and then we have our EMP4S0, and it might be different on yours. It could be like ETH0. But anyways, if it starts with an E, that's your Ethernet card, and that's the card that probably has a wire in it. And if you're using wireless, you can go down here and use the Wi-Fi. I'm using the Wi-Fi, so I'm going to go ahead and choose that. I didn't plug in a wire. I probably should have, because it's more complicated when you use the Wi-Fi. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the SSID, which just happens to be Moto E6BE. Then I'm going to press my down arrow key, and I'm going to skip the encryption. Well, actually, the encryption I believe would be WPA. And then I'm going to press my down arrow key again and type in the password and press OK. And oh, I guess I misspelled the encryption. Wow. Okay. As punishment for that misspelling, they're making me start over again with the encryption. So I got to retype in the SSID. That's a drag. Then down arrow. If you use tab, it'll go all the way down to the OK button. And then we want to put in WEP encryption, down arrow, and then the password again. Okay, we made it through. Wow. That was a tough one. Okay, so the network's working properly. I'm going to go ahead and press OK, or enter, I mean. And so our next choice is sources. So I'm going to go ahead and set our source. I'm going to hit enter. And then we want to choose from either local or network. And the choice on this, you want to go with local because we want to use the packages that are installed on the ISO that we downloaded. If you go with network, you won't get any of that. So you only want to choose network if you're like setting up a server and you're not going to be using the desktop or any of the other stuff that's included. So don't choose network. I know it's easy to confuse the network and you might think, oh, I'm just going to do a network install and it's going to download everything off the internet and I'll be good. Yay! But that's not the case. You'll be in for an unpleasant surprise if you were expecting a Gnome Desktop. So stick with local. And so I'm going to go ahead and press enter with local. And then our next is set a host name. So here I'm just going to call this my username with a hyphen and a PC. And you can use uppercase letters in the host name if you wish. They're not used in your username, but you can use them in the host name. Okay, so now I'll set our locale. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter. And it did a scan. So now I'm going to just type in, I think, a U for US, and then down arrow, and Zulu. Zulu's close enough. No, I'm kidding. Okay, so maybe I want to go with N for New York. Oh, EN, that's what it is. Yeah, we got to start with EN and then come down here. English, United States. I forgot we're in the locale, not the time zone. So got it mixed up there. So EN US for me in this case. Now we go to our time zone. So I'm going to go down here and choose America by using my down arrow. Press enter. And then N. New York is my closest selection there. And then root password. So now we can put in our root password. So I think I'm going to go with my usual super secret one, which is Afghanistan Bananistan. But don't tell anybody. It's our secret. If you tell anyone, then I'll get hacked. So Afghanibit, don't tell anyone. And if they press you for it, just say, I'm telling you, it's not Afghanistan Bananistan. So here we go. And that's the abbreviation. So go ahead and hit next. Enter it in again. And so now we'll go ahead and set our user account. Press enter. And our default login name is void. I think I'll just go with my usual funny name here, Toadwick. And so then we're going to go with our actual username. The one before that was the friendly name that you would normally see. Now we're going to go with Toadwick. Or actually, this would be the friendly name, I think. So if you wanted to put your name and your name was John Phillips or whatever, just type it in there. And I'm just going to keep it Toadwick. And then I'm going to re-enter the password for Toadwick. And you can keep it the same password as your root if you wish. It's probably less complicated. And now we have our group memberships. And the defaults on this should be okay. We got wheel. That's one of the most important ones. That allows you to have sudo privileges. So we definitely want that. Then it looks like we got floppy, disk, video, CD-ROM, optical, XBuilder. So yeah, it looks like all the important stuff there is already checked by default. KVM too, nice. Okay. KVM is a virtual machine, kind of like VirtualBox, but a lot better. It's actually faster and more efficient, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and just go with the defaults there. So I'm going to hit OK. And now select the disk to install our bootloader. All right, now we're getting somewhere. So here we have our SDA and SDB. SDA is typically your hard drive. SDB is typically the thumb drive that you'll plug in to boot into this environment. And as you can see by the sizes, that's the case here. Because our hard drive, it's showing as 465 gigs. So it's a 0.5 terabyte hard drive. And then our thumb drive is a 32 gig actually drive. So I'm going to go ahead and select SDA and then use a graphical terminal for the bootloader. Yeah, I'll go with that. And it's the default answer anyway, so it's always good to go with default typically, unless you're in Microsoft, then you usually want to do the opposite. because they have a way of making you regret whatever it is they want you to choose. Now we're in our partition. So we're going to go ahead and hit this. And then again, I'm going to choose SDA because that's our hard drive. I'm going to hit OK. And then I'm going to go with the easy to use. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that and then press OK. And then here we got a layout of our drive. And so for me, it's going to be kind of easy because I don't really have to change anything here. This install, I believe, has, a separate partition for the home folder. That's how I like to set up my machines usually. Typically when I'm doing a test here, I'll just put it all on one drive. But on my last install, I stuck it on a separate partition just for fun. So I'm going to see if I can just keep it that way. We'll just pretend that we're reinstalling a new Linux on our machine, but we want to keep our home drive. So I'm going to go ahead and see what we got here. So we got a 27 gig. That's our Linux partition. And so I'm just going to go ahead and quit back out of that, actually. And I'm just going to leave all that the way it is. And I'm going to go into our file system. Since we don't have to partition, I'm just going to kind of do this. That way, if you're somebody that has an existing partition and you want to be able to install Void Linux on it, and you want to keep your home folder, we can do it this way. So SDA1 is our actual Linux partition where Linux is installed. So if I leave it on change and I hit enter, then I could go down here and change our file system. But I'm going to go ahead and just keep it the way it is, which I believe it was ButterFS. If not, it is now. So now we're going to put in our mount point, and that will be a slash, and asking us if we want to create a new file system. Yes. Okay. Now I'm going to go down to SDA2, and then we have our swap partition, and that's like 976 megs. And then we have our home folder. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and then it's an ext4 partition. I'm just going to press that, and then I'm going to type in /home, and then I'm going to say no for creating a new file system. And I have no idea if this is going to overwrite and hose everything on the home folder. It's okay if it does because it's a test machine, but if this is a live machine, make sure you have a backup because this might not work. So I'm going to hit no here on creating a new file system, and I'm thinking in theory it's probably not going to format that partition because I said no, but like I said, I don't really know that for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and hit done, and then I'm going to go down to install, and now it's saying data on partitions will be completely destroyed. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes, I'm okay with that. Even though my priceless data is on there and I didn't do a backup, I'm going to destroy it because it's fun. Okay, I'll hit yes. And so now it's beginning the install. And so I'm going to let it go ahead and do its thing. And hopefully I stumbled through that well enough to not mess up the install. So I'm going to let it do its install. I'm going to hit pause here, and then I'll be right back when it's done. Okay, it looks like it finished installing, so that didn't take long at all, about maybe 2 minutes at the most. Wow, I think it was less than 2 minutes actually, so that was quick. I'm going to go ahead and hit yes to reboot, and here we go. Okay, and so here we are in our Gnome Desktop. Wow. And again, we're back to this welcome screen. So I guess we kind of know this routine, don't we? And the keyboard default is good. I'm just going to stay with that and skip that and then hit done. And so we're all good. And I have a square cursor. That's kind of weird. Not quite sure how I ended up with a square cursor. But it's an arrow here. Fascinating. That could just be like some kind of glitch. So I'm just going to log out real quick and just see if that resets. And a bit of a black screen. I guess that's why they call it Void Linux. Because I feel like I'm in the void. Okay. So I'm going to just go ahead and reboot my machine. Okay, I'm back. I'm rebooted back in, and I still have a square cursor. So yeah, I don't really know what the deal is with that. I guess I'm stuck with a square cursor. I hope it won't bother you too much, but I'll see if I can maybe resolve that on the way. So without getting too obsessed, we have our Gnome Desktop, and so it all looks pretty standard Gnome here. Hit my menu, and then we got our standard Gnome applications. That all looks nice. Also our extensions here. So here's where we can manage our extensions if you want to add different things in. And none of these are turned on. So I guess I can rule out any extensions that might be causing my cursor to be square on the desktop. Although I turn that off just for fun. That way we can be sure. And And so, yeah, I would say it's not the extension. But it's nice to see that the extensions manager is in there and installed by default. That's great to have easy access to that right there off the bat. So very good. And then we have our Firefox browser. We have GNOME utilities here, our system monitor, networking, disk usage, image viewer, calculator, document. So yeah, again, pretty much the standard stuff. But let's take a look at tweaks real quick. And here we have our general appearance. So here's where we can set our themes, icons, shell, sound, and all that good stuff. So if I go in here, looks like our default is to add WADA, and also for that. And what do we have under our shell? Nada. Then we have our default sound, zoom. So yeah, that's all good there. And let's just jump down to our extensions. This is where we were before, looking in our extension manager. And you can turn on any of these, of course, if you wish. Problem I have with GNOME is these extensions tend to break every time GNOME does a little update. And so if you get too dependent on those extensions and you like them too much, they're probably not going to work for you at some point, for a while anyway, until the developer can fix what GNOME breaks. Yeah, that's got to be fun to be a developer for those guys. And then here we have our font selection, keyboard and mouse. And as I'm going through here, I'm just kind of hoping I'm going to run into something related to cursors. Because typically you can go in here and set your cursors. But in GNOME, I don't use GNOME that much, so I can't tell you right off the bat where you would go to tweak your cursor. So yeah, I do apologize for that. I suppose I could have faked it and just paused the video and then spent a couple hours looking for it and then came back and unpaused it and pretended I was a genius and said, I know exactly where it is, even though I haven't been in GNOME forever. But I wouldn't do that to you. Then we have our background settings, and here's where we can adjust our wallpaper and all that. The default wallpaper is not actually that bad, but there are a few nice choices here. That's kind of cool if you like being in the water. There's a nice background, kind of an artsy looking thing there. Looks like it was done with some chalk pastels or maybe watercolors. Yeah, I don't know. Pretty vivid for watercolors though, but nonetheless pretty cool. And wow, I'm kind of liking that. Yes, I think I'll go with that. I don't know why. Usually I don't use cold themes, but that one just kind of looks cool. And then our application settings here. So these are all your standard GNOME settings. So in that respect, not anything real new there, of course. And that's a good thing because we want to have a familiar, comfortable environment for sure, especially if you're a GNOME user. And of course, we're using the Wayland windowing system. It looks like that pretty much covers everything for settings. Really nothing new on settings. When we right click, we can get directly into our display settings here, and that's something I like. And the change background. I like the easy access to these two things. And let me just open my terminal real quick, and we pop in here. Just kind of curious to see if HTOP is on here. Nope. Wasn't really expecting it to be, but let's just run top real quick. And wow, 418? Am I reading that right? That's pretty incredible. Yeah, it looks like it's saying 418 megs are being used in resources. Boy, that's pretty darn good. I've never seen anything that low in GNOME before. Wow. So to me, that's phenomenal. That's kind of hard to believe what I'm looking at there. Very cool. So let me just Control C out of that. And so if we want to install something, might as well put on HTOP since we're here. The packaging system is xbps. So I'm going to go ahead, if we wanted to download, first of all, before we download anything, you want to make sure xbps, that the databases are up to date. So the first thing we would do is type in sudo xbps hyphen lowercase u, and that will update it. I'm going to go ahead and put in the password. Sorry, it's not X. We got, okay, I messed that totally up. So it's xbps hyphen install, and then space hyphen u space, and then we got to tell it what we want it to update. And of course we want it to update xbps. That looks better. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and package not found. Fascinating. I think that might actually have to be hyphen su, because we need a capital S in there, just like you would with Pacman to synchronize the databases. So I think that's where I messed up. Like I said, totally not familiar with this packaging system. Never tried it before. There we go. That looks better. So I'm going to go ahead and hit yes, Y for yes, and we're going to go ahead and let that update its database. This is kind of equivalent to typing in Pacman SYU. Actually, in this case, it would be equivalent to Pacman -SYY. with a capital S. And that updates the databases and all that. Now that we've done that, we want to actually update the system. So in order to do that, we want to type in sudo xbps-install and then hyphen uppercase S, U, and V. V is so it's verbose so we can see what's going on. And so then I'll just press enter. And so it did find some updates, so I'm going to go ahead and press yes. And now it's going to go ahead and do an update. And this could take a while. It's been sitting on 0 here for a number of seconds. So I may have to pause the video. Actually, I'll just kind of let that run in the background a little bit while I explore. So we'll just kind of bring that up there. So that's kind of how the package manager works. And so if I come over here to activities, I'm kind of noticing, let me open up our files here, that everything really runs fast and zippy. It feels very smooth. This isn't exactly the newest hardware. This is running on a 12-year-old Sony Vaio all-in-one desktop. So yes, this is actually fairly old hardware, and this GNOME system is just running beautifully on it. I'm really impressed with that. And if I go into my home folder here, it looks like we got a snap folder, and I think that's from my previous install of Linux. So I'm going to go ahead here and just kind of reveal hidden files. I'm kind of curious here. I'm going to look at my bash history. Yeah, these are all things from my previous. So yes, I mean, it did not overwrite the home partition. So that's a good thing to know. Since I did not allow it to change the file system on there, it didn't go ahead and format my partition anyway. So I was afraid it probably would, but it didn't. It did protect my data in my home folder. So that's good to know, and that might come in handy for you if you have a separate partition. But remember to back up your data, because just because it worked for me doesn't mean it will for you. You should know that singled out feeling, right? Because I know it. So yes, that's good. Now, yeah, I don't know how good an idea it is to do that when I'm demoing a new system though, because I could have carried in all those config files and it could have affected the default way that this looks, and that could be why my cursor was square. But now I see that it's not square anymore. So maybe running that update did something, or that squareness might have been a temporary thing. I don't know. But that squareness that I had before in the cursor, I'm glad it's gone. But that might have been because I used the same home folder, because I used Toadwake in my last video, and that was the name of this home folder, so it actually used the very same home folder, and it could very well have pulled some kind of config from that last install. However, the last install was an XFCE install, so it shouldn't really have much effect on the GNOME here. So that was kind of my reasoning for just taking the chance and showing you how you can install this with a second partition as well, instead of the usual just wipe the whole drive kind of install. So there you go. And typically I like having a second partition for a home folder, because if I have my home folder on its own separate partition, if something goes wrong with my Linux and I got to totally reinstall it, then I don't have to touch my home folder or the configs or anything else. And if I just wanted to give it a whole new flavor of Linux, like maybe not even the same desktop, like for example, if I'm running KDE and I want to install a new Linux distro and it's say Mate, then all I have to do is in my live version just go in there, rename my home folder to something else, and then that way it'll preserve that home folder, and then I would just go ahead and do my install, and then it would automatically create the home folder from my old name, and then all I have to do is just cut and paste my old folders into my new folder, and then I still retain my new configuration that I need for my Mate desktop, but I can quickly bring my data over because I'm moving it. I'm just doing a cut and paste, and that'll bring it over really quick. You don't have to, it's not as time consuming as if you were going to copy them. So that's kind of how I do it. And that's just one way to do it. There's a lot of ways you can do it. You can modify your FS tab and stuff like that. But you know, I like to keep things simple. Okay, so how's our updates coming? 18%. Yeah, that could take a while. I might have to hit the pause key on this one. So anyways, I'm glad to see that our home folder did come through. I think that's really cool. I'm going to turn off my hidden files again. And so there's really nothing on here because, again, it was just a demo, and I think this might have been from my Debian 11 video, I think is what this home folder was originally created under for that. And so the Debian, I think we were in the XFCE desktop. So yes, that's all good. Excellent. And nothing in the trash. So there you go. I'm going to go ahead and let these updates finish, and then as soon as they're finished, I'm going to pop back in here and give you some more of my thoughts. Okay, so the install is complete here. And oh yes, I am back. And my background went black and went white on me. And so that was a bummer. The update didn't take too long. Well, it took about 15 or 20 minutes. And then I had a little bit of a power glitch. So that was fun. But I'm back and everything's good. I had to restart. So that kind of messed me up a little bit, because one thing I wanted to kind of show you, I even had to change my background actually. And let me just show you real quick. The background that you just saw a few seconds ago with that cool frost and everything, well, it disappeared on me. It's gone. So apparently that's not included in the new update. So if you like that background and you were using it, you probably want to save it before you do the backup. So I got the next best one there. This one's kind of similar. It has a big giant snowflake instead of the tiny little frost crystals that we had before. But yeah, and I think the reason the background went white is because when you do an update, it doesn't restart your services. Because as you're going through the update process, services have to be stopped so they can update. And then in Void Linux, they don't restart. So you actually have to, there is a set of tools available in Void Linux called xtools. And in xtools, there's a utility called xcheck restart. And so that's something you should run after you do an update. And xcheck restart will go ahead and restart all those services that were stopped. And so mine already restarted anyway, because I had to obviously restart the computer because it was off. Luckily it went off after the end of the update, so that was really lucky. However, I'm going to go ahead and run that. So I believe you got to be root to do that. So I'm just going to do sudo xcheck restart. And not found. Okay, so apparently xtools is not installed by default. So I'm going to just go ahead and install that real quick. So that would just be sudo xbps. Whoops, got the B and the P mixed up. xpbs -su xtools. And looks like I got that kind of mixed up. xbps. Always get that B and P mixed up for some reason. I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that. Okay, so we got xtools. Now if we run that xcheck restart, just going to hit my up arrow a couple times, it should run this time. And it is. So it's going ahead and it's going to restart all these different services, although I really didn't have to do that, so I probably shouldn't have hit enter. But that's okay. I'll just go ahead and pause this and let it kind of restart all those services, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so they all restarted, and since we're on the subject of services, like I said in the beginning of this video, we're running Runit as our init system instead of systemd. And so with Runit, you start your services different. Like you're probably familiar with if you're on systemd, if you have to restart or start a service or enable it or whatever, you're used to using systemctl and then, for example, start and then like sshd for your SSH daemon, and you would run that. But if you do that on here, you're going to get command not found because we're running Runit instead of systemd. So in Runit, you would actually use a different command, and that would be, and that's got to be run as sudo. It would be sv, so sv for service. And then instead of saying start, you would say up. And to stop it, it would be down. So up and down, start and stop. And then your service, sshd, and then it shouldn't complain. There we go. And I probably started my sshd service if it wasn't started already. And so now I'm going to go ahead and download HTOP. That's what I was going to do before I did all these updates and everything. So I'm just going to up arrow here real quick and then just come back and change that to HTOP and do the install. And wow, it's showing space available on disk. That's kind of cool. Okay, so we got space available. That's something I haven't seen before. So I guess that's something unique to Void. That's kind of cool. I like that. Yeah, nice. All right. Well, anyway, let me pop into HTOP, and there's our services, and we're running 649 megs. That's incredible on GNOME. Of course, I think there's two reasons for that. One reason is this is really a very bare bones install. When we go into our menu, you can see that really there's not all that much installed on here. So it's really kind of all your very basic stuff and not really a lot. And then here you got your GNOME utilities here, and that's about it. So you really don't have a whole lot of things in here cluttering things up. No bloat at all. You can install the stuff you want. I think the other factor could be because our init is Runit as opposed to systemd, and the people that don't like systemd, one of the reasons among many, I think, is the fact that systemd has a lot of extra processes that run that a lot of people feel are unnecessary or unwanted. And so Runit would not be running all those extra things in the background. So with less overhead, Runit is very light. And so with that lightweight init system too, I think that also contributes to the low resource usage that we're seeing here. I really like that. I think that's really impressive. Very cool. Big thumbs up for that one. And so yes, I think I covered everything here. These are just kind of the basics anyway. Unfortunately, this is my first experience with Void Linux, so there could be a lot of things that I'm missing. But I tried to do as much homework on the website as I could before I did this video, so I could at least cover some things that were really notable. So I hope that really helped. And I hope it also helped that I showed you how to install this on a separate partition. It might help somebody anyway. So with all that said, yes, I think we kind of covered everything. And Brandon, thank you so much for suggesting this, and thanks to you too, Chris, for reinforcing that and kind of giving me that extra push to get this Void review happening. So there we go. That should cover it. And I would totally recommend Void Linux to anybody that wants to give it a try. I've heard it described as kind of a combination of FreeBSD and Linux, you know. I think because of maybe the stability and the uniqueness. I don't really know exactly the full logic behind that statement, but it does feel super stable and really snappy. And like I said, this is an older hardware, about 12 years old, an all-in-one desktop, and it does have 16 gigs of RAM on it. However, it's older hardware, and this thing is running GNOME beautifully. I don't think I've had a distro running GNOME that ran this smoothly at all before on this computer. So that says a lot. It just feels very light, snappy. If I was using this as a daily driver, I think I would be very comfortable in it. I might use a different desktop. I'm not a huge GNOME fan, but with that said, even in this GNOME environment, I am comfortable because it just feels good and stable. So yes, my thoughts are, by all means, give Void Linux a try, and you just might end up having it as your daily driver. So with that said, I hope this review was helpful, and if it was, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.